Welcome to another AI Wisdom podcast. Today we have a special guest. Travis Oliphant is with us today. He's connecting companies with communities. He's the CEO and founder of Quansight. He's the head of OSS slash platform at Zyphra, principal OSA founder at Open Teams, founder of Anaconda, NumFOCUS, Pi Data, and NumPy, SciPy, and Numba. So quite the impressive guy here today. I was reading some of his paper and yeah, I'm just honored to have you on. Travis, can you tell us a bit more about yourself and what you're up to?
That's kind. Yeah, I am up to trying to help. I love open source communities and I love entrepreneurship. And so I've been basically trying to unify those two passions over the past 15 years. I love science. That's where I got my start in applied math and science. So I love all things about human progress and flourishing. And so been spending the last, while getting excited about open source science that I started in the SciPy NumPy community many years ago now. I wrote NumPy in 2005, and it was a unification effort to bring the scientific community together around in Python, and that helped. I was part of, me with hundreds of other people who basically continue to contribute packages to that ecosystem. We created Anaconda and the Pi Data ecosystem, and then NumFOCUS, a nonprofit, helped it to flourish even more. And then I left Anaconda and started Quansight, and Quansight created an incubator created Open Teams. And I just basically am trying to find entrepreneurs. Essentially what I do all the time is I look for people to partner with, look for entrepreneurs, look for fun people I can help. I really like the early stage part of a company, how to go from nothing to a thing that could be funded. So I tend to invest at that level and tend to kind of help coach. Essentially, I try to help share information that I wish I'd known, when I was first getting started in this space, and then really love seeing grow the number of owners in the world. I really am eager to see, and my take on AI, and I love AI, the foundation of it I love. I'm really enthusiastic and optimistic about AI in general, especially if we can keep it spread. I really want a decentralized ecosystem. I'm really big on AI sovereignty. In fact, Open Teams is the one company I'm really pushing right now. One of the companies I'm pushing, but it's a company I found a CEO where we're partnering together to build help AI for everybody. In a sense, we want people to own their own data, own their own AI. It's not that you can't use other people's AI, you can, and it's great. But you just want to make sure you're doing it intentionally, that you're not, unintentionally giving your core capability to somebody else's AI. I'm not as concerned about AI, takeover, as if we can keep AI essentially distributed, lots of them, that under the essentially watchful guidance of accountable agents that are that are human. We for a long time had challenges of humans trying to take over each other, right? This is something that the world histories have seen. Empires, centralized organizations, people trying to amass power. So we're not new to this problem, and I just don't want I want AI to help us uh, create wealthier worlds with more decentralization and more owners, as opposed to the opposite. So that gives a nutshell kind of what I care about and what I'm pushing for and the things I care about a lot. So deeply interested in open source communities, because that's one reason I think that if we can succeed in making AI more open and kind of empowered by lots of open source communities that gave rise to it, let's keep it true to that. Then I think that's one way. But yeah, so that's me. I love the chance to talk about AI any chance I get, in particular the foundations of AI and where it's and how we can enable more people with it.
Your life looks like controlled chaos. I'm saying this because you've accomplished a lot, right? But in various
It is.
different fields. And I usually end up with that question, but I want to start with that one in your case. What does a day in your life look like?
Wow, right now, a day in my life looks like essentially bouncing between uh, 10 to 15 different conversations that are essential. So it's a lot of context switching. Now, most days it's not 10 to 15. It's probably more like five. Sometimes it gets up to 15. And then it's like anybody else, it's challenging to do that kind of context switching multiple times. A lot of times it's essentially debugging relationship issues. It's ensuring that and ensuring people have information, and then making funding decisions, right? Deciding where, what allocations or what budgets should go where. That's different than what the day of my life was like even 10 years ago or 5 years ago, where it was actually, and what I still try to do today, day in my life also includes some YouTube watching and some coding examples, some vibe coding, trying to actually do some experimenting with AI. The vibe coding is a term I just accept. I don't know if I do it correctly. I'm just saying using AI to prompt, see the code, and then see how well it's doing. And then kind of dreaming. I do spend time pretty much every day kind of dreaming about what the future could be and about what it might look like, and kind of then playing out scenarios in my head and arguing those to myself.
And how do you dream? Is it through conversation with others, or you have like some kind of meditation practice in which you dream
I do have
out loud?
I do have a meditation practice. It's not it's sort of periodic throughout the day, multiple times. Not really formal, um, but just asking, somewhat stream of consciousness, but usually it's related to the conversations I've been having over the past week or 3 weeks. So part of the key for me is just engaging with. I really care about the people I surround myself with and the people I get to interact with. So finding opportunities to to interact with articulate, thoughtful, compassionate people who are oriented towards human uplift, and trying to avoid interactions where there's too much given to their self-centeredness. Like all of us are self-centered to a little bit. Like we can't avoid it, but I love meeting people who have worked on attenuating that aspect of their lives and are not essentially just trying to in it for them.
Right. And do you feel that Sam Altman has his ethics and his EQ at the right place? Would you trust him with the future of
Wow, getting right
AGI?
at it.
And wait, I have another one
Okay, go
because
ahead.
I'm testing your multitasking brain
Okay,
here.
go ahead. Yeah.
Do you feel he's done a good job at democratizing AI?
So I don't know Sam Altman well enough, other than by his actions. I don't know him personally. So um, I feel like he's done a good job of creating of showing the potential of AI, kind of really focusing investment to create kind of a future of what's possible. And I respect that. I respect people that take that risk and organize resources and people to develop and help people see the future. I am concerned by any organization that sort of um, it's kind of the stated goals. But I've seen him recently kind of be aware of that, and I think try to make some changes. So I'm open to how uh, he might. Is it just naivete or is it intentionality? Is he sort of not aware of the problems of centralized AI, or is he just trying to push the boundary? And pushing the boundary often does require centralization for a time. Right now, so I guess I'm skeptical. I'm Sam Altman skeptical, but I'm not. I'm always open to people changing or changing tact.
And the democratization question?
Yeah, not as much as I would like, but I get it that the problem of, like, I'm a huge open source fanatic, but I'm also recognizing the challenge of funding, the challenge of sustainability, and I don't like the fact that I don't want a ministry of open source. I don't want government to step in and force open source on everybody. I want to see voluntary win-win scenarios emerge where open source thrives because it helps everybody. So I get the problem. I would love to see more of the stuff he's working on open source. Um, what he does is organize capital, and he's organized capital into promoting and pushing AI forward. And because that's happened, it inspires people who then themselves help move it forward and make it open source. So indirectly, I think he's had a big role to play in democratizing AI, actually, indirectly, but directly, probably not as much.
Right. We've also seen some mercenaries bastardize open source. We've seen Zuck and Elon go into this.
Mm-hmm.
So isn't
Mm-hmm.
it the nature of power seekers or Machiavellian type of folks to use these beautiful movements into actual weapons for their own benefits?
I think most people actually aren't intending to be dominating. I think it's more of misaligned incentives. It does take capital. It does take capital to create. And so how we organize that capital can matter. And it takes leadership to organize capital. It takes, in particular, it takes mission and vision to organize capital. So we need that. We need people who will do that. I think incentives matter a lot. I think it can be a dangerous challenge, and I've experienced this not at the scale of Elon Musk, but personally as well. To see as you're organizing a company and you're organizing an activity, you do have to put intentional direction into it. Like if you don't, then things just kind of decay into it's a lot like MRI. It's like I don't know, and this is probably a great metaphor for everybody else, but the MRI is done with magnetization vectors that are spinning a particular way, and there's a decoherence that occurs that loses the signal, right? And so that decoherence loses the signal in MRI and other physical systems. The same thing can happen in human systems, where there's a decoherence of activity. And it's not that the activity is not, there's a lot of activity happening, it's just not coherent anymore. And that decoherence is actually a feature when it comes to democratization. Like you want decoherent activity in lots of directions to avoid, it's actually an information source. So you end up getting more information about what's possible, what's needed to really support the breadth and diversity of human experience requires that decoherence, right? But then when you're trying to actually just like build a wall or create a building or create a company or create a product, you have to have some coherence, right? One of the and how do you get that cooperative coherence to be aligned? Now, I think that AI can help us. The theory of the firm, right? The theory of the firm, which kind of leads to some economies of scale, the notion of economy of scale. I think actually AI can help us not have the same trade-offs we used to have. And I'm looking forward to that actually. And so I think we have to think fundamentally. That's what I would love. That's what I want to encourage. That's why I want to go about open source. One thing I love about entrepreneurship is it enables people to think creatively about how do you serve people around you? How do you get people things that they want? With the discipline of people, we're humans. All of us are pretty discerning customers. We want our stuff done well. We go to the doctor, we want it done well. When we buy a product, we want it done well. Like we really want it done well. And so to deliver things done well does require effort. It requires coherent effort by a bunch of people organized to deliver that. And leaders that can do that, I admire. I don't, when I see the output of that be too much centralization, too much power in the hands of too few people, I think that's dangerous fundamentally. I think it ultimately leads to a lack of information, a lack of service. So I don't know, that dichotomy has been going on for 1,000 years, and I don't claim to have all the wisdom about how to address it. I just can see that it's not going well, and then look for why is it not going well, and try to figure out how to create different incentives. So, and I admire the activity that leads to coherent work together, and I'm nervous about power centers that it can lead to.
Yeah, it is super tricky, right? Because in the US right now, we live in the age of separation, of discord, right? And that's a very tricky situation. When you start a community, you want common values, and that doesn't mean that agreeableness and being a yes man is part of that. I think that would be quite a toxic community, to your point. So I think it's like establishing this value, but I think it's thoughtful disagreements, right? So one, knowing how to disagree with someone to not hurt their feelings or EQ and these kind of things. But yeah, it's also like going for the truth, right? And the scientific truth. So in the US, how the fuck do you want to argue with conspiracy theorists? They start from a very shaky basis that won't go anywhere. So in my community, there would be a no conspiracy theorist rule, for example. Although there is a part of it that is valuable, it's like contesting the current establishment and so forth. That's useful. But you mentioned
you want to be you allow for skepticism. Allow for skepticism. Even that actually one of the things that's often conspiracy theorists or lack is the ability to be skeptical about their theory.
Right. Correct.
Like you need to be like allow for skepticism, right? And it's a
Yeah.
balance because, and sometimes that balance is achieved from different people. Like some people are just really good skeptics. They're just really good at doing that. They just sort of, and okay, good. You need to be part of every team. Every team needs their skeptic. I have lots of colleagues. Um, some of them are super enthusiastic because you need enthusiasm too. You need the energy
Yes, as well.
of oh hey this hope and push, and then you also need
Optimism.
optimism. You need that optimism, but you also need realism, right? It's one thing to say, to optimistically say, I love hiking, therefore I'm going to go hike Mount Everest tomorrow. Awesome, I'll just do it. I'm optimistic. I'm going to do it. I'm not going to make it to Mount Everest if I just go wander off into the wilderness with no planning, no training. So
Yeah. Or Stockton style, right? Like the open
yes,
gates thing that imploded in the sea that was pretty
yes,
silly and dangerous.
yes, exactly. So again, there's numerous examples, but there's also true that I'll do nothing if I don't get excited about something, right? If I'm just like, oh, I'll never achieve. Like if I look, if somebody would have told me 20 years ago when I was starting, sci-fi, and it started small. It started with a strong goal, and if the goal was, hey, you're going to actually get 25% of scientists to use your tool, and if that was the intended goal, I probably would have been too scared to do it. I probably would have been like, oh, I can't possibly do that. I'm not going to be able to. Like, so you can't sort of, you can't be afraid of the possibilities. If I thought, oh, you got to get 40 million users of Anaconda, and that's the goal, whether it's to be successful. And if I had thought that, I would have been, oh, we're not going to make it, so we can't take, the investment money. I mean, there's this moment at which you have to make a decision of, am I going to act or not act? And I would say the biggest thing for me is those moments where there's been, okay, yes, I'm here as a professor and I kind of know what I need to do in order to get tenure. And it doesn't include writing NumPy, but I also see that the world needs somebody to write NumPy, right? And it looks like I am one of the handful of people in the world right now that could do it. And it's not because of any particular unique skills. There are a lot of people with the skills to write NumPy at that time, but it's the connections, the awareness, the time, the availability, like all those things that come together to make it possible for me to do it.
Yeah,
And
the naivete,
the
right? But
naivete,
also
the
the
naivete,
endurance, right? Because you
endurance.
probably had various setbacks along the way, but you
Oh
still
yeah.
decided to push through.
Oh yeah. No, and to me the way you handle it could be a little challenging because you do at some point setbacks, may the answer may be to stop and to redirect. Like after, it is true. I can't deny that sometimes the setbacks are signal, right? And then you have it's evaluating the setback, understanding what is it, because you have to start with enough enthusiasm, grit, desire, vision, mission to push through most of the setbacks. That is what I admire about any entrepreneur actually, and I can critique any entrepreneur, I can critique myself. Like all of us are full of good and bad, and all of us are full of good things to learn, and then like, oh, that wasn't so great. You shouldn't, let me learn from that. Like that's exactly what I want to do right now is help people learn from the mistakes I made so they can make their own mistakes, not make the same ones.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
absolutely.
There's like yeah, and Elon's a good example. Zuck too, obviously. So I respect them for that. For other things, I less respect them. But I think it's like what do you say? How do you say that? The genius curse, the savant curse, you absolutely need to be weird and fucked in some life areas to be that good in others. I mean, the laws of thermodynamics and physics are that you need to do some sacrifice to get a greater output, aren't they?
Yes. Yeah. Totally agree. Totally agree.
To
Yeah.
continue the last conversation and the question I was about to ask, and I'd love the conversation we're having, but we're talking about communities, right? And you mentioned AI, but I do think that AI is quite sycophantic nowadays. It's a yes man, basically. Is that a UX
That
bug,
I think it's a
or
UX bug. I think it's a current version. There are some AIs that are not tailored toward that, but the most common ones have certainly learned that local minima. They're becoming more sycophantic. I mean, it's like, and I think it's well, I don't know because I haven't been the person involved in those training feedback cycles, but I think it's because of the training, because it's people like, and this is the same problem with leaders actually. One of the problems with being a leader is it's very easy to surround yourself with yes people because they are rewarded intrinsically. And so a lot of people, that's what they learn to do. They learn to just be the yes person for the person in charge. But that is actually long-term terrible. It's terrible for the leader. It's terrible for the system because you then lose the feedback loop. So I think AI is following the same trap, but I don't know that it'll stay there. And certainly what I want to see is, millions and billions of AI systems, right? Actually, I would love to see every human have probably 10 to 100 AI systems that they are themselves sovereign over, right?
Right. And I have a question for that. But just to close off the sycophantic window, I think it is essential for OpenAI to grow, right? Because the more sycophantic, the more data, the more customers,
Yeah,
the more
you're
money,
right.
the more funding, and
Yeah, I think
that's like their
it's a
German weapon.
negative feedback loop, an inappropriate incentive structure. Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite dangerous. And now imagine when they'll deploy AI agents and these things will do everything that you want. That's a bit slippery slope.
Well, certainly it's a slippery slope in many ways, actually. I've been, I haven't liked the term agent for about a year. I've heard it for about a year, and I've been kind of negative about it for a year. Like I like
Why?
AI workflows. I don't like AI agents because I think it tells the wrong um, story about what's possible today, what AI can do today. And partly because I love the word agency. To me, agency is the foundation of making a choice. It's the ability to choose that humans have and machines don't yet. And will they ever? I'm not going to speculate on that, but they don't now. And um, I think that's a really important thing. And when you have an AI agent, it's not choosing anything. It's just a follower. It's just an instructor. It's just doing stuff. Like really good agents, in fact, what you want is an agent that understands you and then does make choices, essentially predictions that on your behalf. And that is one way you could characterize building an intelligent system that is good at making predictions on your behalf. But in order to get to that kind of a model, it's going to have a feedback loop with you personally, not with a generic set of millions of personas that are slightly different than you.
And,
So
and
I don't like the
dangerous
term. I
when
get I
you
get what they're
have like
doing. I call it workflows. I call it AI systems, AI scripts. My favorite way to think about agents right now is AI is really, really good at translating, really good at predicting tokens about what humans would have said. It's got a great language model or a great system model, but then interact with a traditional computing system that's very formulaic about what it does. So it's a really good interface between programming and humans. And so I've been a big proponent of increasing program literacy for a long time. That's why I came to Python ultimately to begin with. Python was and still is a very good system for connecting humans to programming. Now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, I think a lot of people will be using language to connect with computing. I don't think there still will need to be programs that are run because they're predictable. There's a huge theory of computability and computer science that we shouldn't ignore and pretend and reinvent inappropriately. But right now, interfacing human knowledge, human expression with computing is the thing we should be talking about in my mind, not agents.
or even one thing that's even more important related to AI ethics. Let's say that OpenAI is in charge right now of knowing what you would potentially mean, right? Hence, it's determining how you should think. How should they
This is
actually
again why I
be in
do not like
charge?
the concept of a single AI. Like this idea of a single AI. Oh, I want billions of AIs. AI is just simply a model. It's simply a model, and we have the human brain. What we do know about humans is we have lots of systems inside of lots of intelligent systems inside of our own personas. Like we're not just one intelligent system. We've got multiple models inside of our brain. We're still learning exactly how we work, how our brain work. We don't know everything about it, but what we do know, we know there's lots of systems, at least 1,000, if not tens of thousands of predictive models inside of our brain, maybe even 100,000. I don't know, but it's probably in the order of 10 to 100,000 individual systems. And so I already have that going on, and I'm talking about augmenting that with potentially additional intelligent systems that need to ultimately be under my accountability. So I do there are people that are thinking this way. There are people thinking about creating, like I heard the term today from a colleague, AI centaur, kind of the idea of a centaur being a human horse, but and this is just simply training people to be managers of AIs. My goal is that I would love to see a world where the AIs you're managing are not just APIs, not just SaaS APIs on some big model in some cloud somewhere, but they're actually on your computer, in your data center, on your phone, bringing AI to the edge. And a year ago that wasn't possible. It is possible today. Like some of we all don't need massive AIs, these brute force AIs that have been trained. I'm not against training them. I think it's great. I think it's really pushing the boundary and helping us learn about intelligent systems to train them. But ultimately, how do we take those and then make them and package them and bring them to our own data centers? So if you have computing is getting more and more accessible. You could have 8 GPUs available in your house for not very much money, and now you can have you can have an AI running on that helps you. You can have multiple AIs running on that are your own.
Right.
So that's what I get
And
excited about.
my brain cannot stop thinking of blockchain when it thinks of like redistributed models. And do you think that a super intelligence and AGI would eventually redistribute itself over people and not charge anyone for anything, or
I
empower
don't know
them
about that.
for their own model?
I don't know about that. I don't know. I don't know enough to know. That certainly is a risk. I mean, we don't know what super intelligence is, other than a metaphor, other than a speculative idea of what that could look like. But we do know that we can create intelligent systems, and we already know that humans interacting with each other can often create valleys of power structure that are not healthy. Like all we have to do is look at human history and see that humans have organized themselves in ways that have led to the death of other millions of humans, or that have led to the lack of prospering. Whether it be a local area where command control and dominance creates an incentive structure that empowers a few at the expense of everybody, or we have kind of a system where, actually by serving each other through market engagement and private property ownership, and the only way I can help you is to serve you, the only way I can get you to do what I want is to give you something you want. Like if that's enforced, instead of just might makes right, if actually service makes success, then we have to the degree that's happening, we have immense prosperity emerging. So those principles, those learnings of history, those learnings with human intelligence, I just want to apply some of those, and as we get in artificial intelligence, computing, let's say silicon intelligence. How do we have silicon intelligence become our master? Become our servant as opposed to our superior. So I'm more concerned about the local situation. I'm more concerned about right now, actually, the current rules, the current governance decisions. Like I'm more concerned about current governments immediately turning to a few big companies to have them do the AI. Like I really am concerned about that, because because it's usually for convenience, or because it's quick, or because it's soon, and I'm worried about falling behind, that they'll somehow give sovereignty over to a model as opposed to bringing the model to the sovereign, which is much more what I think we should be doing.
And has there been models historically that's been proven that communities and open source could fight Goliath?
I don't know yet. I mean, I don't know if I'm qualified to answer that. In terms of, I use AI.
There's been Linux for sure. Linux is a good one.
Yes. I would say open source communities in general. There've been, there's 40 million and growing GitHub users. There's, it's a power distribution. So how many actively contribute to open source projects? It's likely it's about 100,000, maybe 40 to 100,000 people that actually significantly contribute to open source projects today. I don't know. GitHub would have better data on that. But Linux is an example of a community that created a huge ecosystem that spread like wildfire. Python as a language is a good example of not just a single community, but a society and an ecosystem of communities. There's literally 1,000 communities inside of Python and more, and they each have their own flavor and color, and they're as they're as diverse as humans are diverse. What I love about open source in particular is what it exposes about humans, which is, humans are really, we're incredibly social, we're incredibly giving to each other, we're incredibly willing to cooperate, unless we're unless we're scared, unless we are afraid, and then we can definitely close in, fight, react. And so how do we, how do we amplify the best attributes of humanity in order to provide the most prosperous and peaceful world for everybody? Like, that's what excites me, is when I've seen evidence of that in open source cooperation, when I've seen evidence of that in company cooperation, and people starting companies, serving their fellow people, and then making a living and being able to support themselves and other people, provide jobs for many people, and then take resources they earn and then invest that back into productive aspects of the economy. Like, these are beautiful things, and the more thinking, the more people, the more kinds of people that get involved with that, the better it is. Like, so it's a parallel here. Like, the more that humans use their intelligence to have diverse and distributed authorities and ecosystems and organizations, the better off the world is. The more, and I feel like there's a parallel here for AI. The more artificial intelligences are actually distributed, decentralized, available, connected, not just running on single servers controlled by single committees, controlled by single thought patterns. Like, that is the danger. That is the thing we need to avoid. We need to take AI as a technology and use it and distribute it to as many people as possible and enable as many people as possible. So that's what that's exactly what my philosophy and what I care about right now, and what I'm trying to make efforts to support.
Right. On my side, I think I did lose faith on the wisdom of crowd. I think people still need to be held in check in some shape and form. But to come back to Sam Altman, right, like, which is advancing AGI.
I'm definitely not a wisdom of crowds. It doesn't always work for 100%. It 100%. We know that, actually. There's times it works, sometimes it doesn't work, and there's actually interesting aspects about when and why. You can learn a lot about that. But back to
Depends
Sam
on the
Altman.
crowd, right?
Depends on the crowds, depends on their knowledge, depends on their information. Like, you also have mobs, right? The wisdom of crowds or the madness of mobs. You have this sort of dichotomy, and which is it?
Yeah, the syndicates, and you know what happened with the syndicates. The mafia started to get involved into that. So there's always like a toxicity that creeps in. But coming back to Sam Altman, that's advancing AGI as fast as possible. If you put yourself in his shoes for a couple of seconds, right? Like, he went into nonprofits first, then that failed. The board tried to keep them out. There was Elon that was incredibly toxic, that tried to get control, right, over it. So his thesis is very much capitalistic, is I will amass as much capital and power as much as possible, because if I don't do it, there's folks like Elon that are going to catch up next to it. So I think it's a sound thesis, but how can he stay sane on top of that and still be held in check is my question for you.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm qualified to answer that. I mean, I hesitate to put caricatures around any of those people involved. I think, both Elon and Sam are rich personas with lots of competing interests and thoughts. I've heard both of them say very compelling things about their desire to have humanity progress. And so it's not, I don't attribute to either of them, to both either
But
Elon
Elon
or
has a
Sam.
very bad track record. I'm going to add that. And Sam Altman, it's still intact.
It's still intact. Perhaps, I don't know. I don't know if I'd agree with that yet, actually. I would say Elon's interpersonal skills leave a lot to be desired. The way he drives people and the way he interacts with people on a human basis leaves for a lot of criticism. 100% agree. But as a collective, I think his publicly stated words, he actually is looking to preserve humanity. Sam, I don't know well enough yet. I think he's more new to the game. Like, this is one of his first. I mean, he's not naive, and he's not, but he's still pretty young. He's still had this is one of his first big endeavors, and he's getting scarred a bit with the interaction with other egos and with other people. He's been incredibly able to raise money, which I tip my hat to somebody that can organize thinking and organize a vision sufficient to get people to open their checkbooks and open their wallets and create an incentive alignment perspective. He's doing it in the context of a Silicon Valley ethos that's been around. He's not doing it alone. He's doing it kind of at the pinnacle of 40 years of this concept of Silicon Valley raising money and then making people even more wealthy, right? That I do think it has a limit. Like at some point, every system you start to overload its ability to keep returning. Like if you're early and you're only taking a percentage of the power of the United States to do it, then sure, you can keep growing. But all of a sudden, what they're talking about is requiring remapping how energy generation is produced in the United States entirely. That's going to have an impact. That's not going to have the same kind of financial windfall for everybody that perhaps early stage Silicon Valley giants had. When you were just taking advantage of the early network effects, you're just taking advantage of moving marketing, for example, from Madison Avenue in New York, pulling it to Silicon Valley, right? When you basically have all these these flows of money and you're recentering them down through another place, you have a lot of money to earn. I don't know that Sam has figured out a way to actually return to his investors. I think there's going to be a real difficulty there, actually, because and my concern is that once investors are wanting their return and like, oh, the way to get that return is to monetize people, right? Is to essentially take advantage of the fact that you have the data, you can essentially take over the businesses that have trusted you with their data. Because essentially my view is that a business, a lot of what your business is the processes, a lot of the important information is your relationships, your business practices, your customer list, your customer, your inertia of your customers. Now, if you have an AI if you've allowed your business to have an AI doing all that, and that AI is owned by somebody else effectively, then what's to stop them from just taking over that business? And we've seen this in a small scale at Meta when they took over all the
Google.
communities, Google, Amazon. I mean, and they all know this, and they all like, well, how much do we want to? They need their partner networks, and then how do they? And so I'm not claiming that it's impossible to navigate that at all. I'm just saying that generally, I think the incentive alignment creates a substrate that is not a great place for us to be experimenting. Because my concern is that that's a big experimentation that's happening that could have massive dramatic impact. Because now it's not just each business, it's also governments, it's the state governments, it's the city governments, the county governments, it's the US governments. And now all of a sudden, the power of how do people make laws? How do people decide who goes to jail and who doesn't go to jail? How do people decide, what we fight against and what we are peaceful about? AI can control, and now we've already seen that with media coverage, the impact that just communication and information flow by controlling the centers of information flow can have a huge impact on the Overton window and what people are allowed to talk about. And we watched as that got flipped upside down, and we think we're just we're this great place. I personally was astonished because as a young man, when I saw the internet emerge, and I was so excited by the potential for the internet to allow information to spread freely. And in the context, the idea, kind of back to your wisdom of crowd or madness of crowds, the idea that, oh, if we just have information flow freely, then the best information will actually be able to rise to the surface and everybody will be better off because we'll be able to discern what's good and what's wrong. Well, that didn't work. Largely, one of the reasons I think it didn't work is that that money buys bandwidth, right? And that people with more money could control the bandwidth. So it's really the playing field you're on for sharing information is not just if you have an idea, it's shared equilaterally with everybody else's idea. You have an idea, it's amplified by how much money you have. And so
Yeah, still
ideas with a lot
is.
of money behind it still is. It still is. And so ideas with a lot of money behind it is how you're able to actually push that even farther. Actually, it's part of the reason that I raised money at Anaconda. Like Anaconda started as a bootstrap company, Continuum Analytics. We were raking money from services and we wanted to build a product. And at some point, it became very clear that because of the impact of Silicon Valley in the ecosystem, and they were pushing at the time, they were pushing, it was data science. AI had not emerged yet. Machine learning was there. Scikit-learn was there. We were helping make it. In fact, Anaconda grew because it was the easiest way to get scikit-learn. But people were pushing the Hadoop ecosystem, right? And distributed data. And a lot of those ideas were actually bad ideas. They weren't, it was what they were pushing was what Google had worked on and thrown out. And they were doing something different. But people basically took money and amplified that message to a lot of people who didn't know better, but just had to go look around and say, well, everyone's saying this, so I better do that. And this is the first time I realized very fundamentally that money buys influence. And so even to be relevant, we had a product we were selling, and even to be relevant, it made a big difference for us to sell to the corporations when we had funding. So because they were looking, well, what about you? Are you guys gonna be around? Are you gonna have anybody backing you? It wasn't just the money that provided influence, also the awareness of, oh, you are backed by somebody. So the network effect and the predictive effect of saying what's going to last or not last. Now, is AI? AI could change that, right? We're seeing right now that people are like, well, wait, I don't really have to have a big company and have a product that I ship because AI can help me. Cloud has helped that. It's not just AI, the digital transformation of the past 20 years, cloud is helping. All of a sudden, you don't have to have your own servers. You can rent servers really inexpensively and then ship an ecosystem and build a network without a lot of staff. And so that, that's given rise to several companies that are now behemoths. AI, I think everyone's enthusiastic about that today with AI. I think that will be possible. What it will amplify, I hope what it'll amplify, what I think it'll amplify expertise in some other area. So if you're someone who knows something about science, about hardware, about geophysics, about electromagnetism, about weather, about sales, about marketing, about human interaction, about anything, all of a sudden you can build software straightforwardly, easily, not with much difficulty, to help you promote that knowledge to more people. And I think that's so AI enabling the subject matter experts to sell themselves better is what I think is possible right now.
Love that. Love your mind, Travis. We're going to have you for round 2. Till then, where can people find out more about you and your companies?
So you can find me on LinkedIn at TE Oliphant, TEOLIPHANT. You can find me on X. Although I don't have X on my phone, I've kind of taken social media off my phone, but I still interact on the web, just because it's too distracting. But you can find me on email, travis@openteams.com, on LinkedIn, and on X. I am also on Blue Sky, and I'm responsive on WhatsApp. So I'm all over the place. But Open Teams is where you can see our company that's making sovereign AI possible for everybody. And then I have an incubator. If you're an early stage entrepreneur that wants to get help in building your company, reach out to me and we have an incubator to help.
So that was Travis and Charles for another